Hello, and welcome to the 10th episode of Let's Learn Blades in the Dark. In this episode, we will discuss gathering information. So, gathering information is described as follows. When you want to know something specific about the fictional world, your character can gather information. The GM will ask how your character gathers the info, or how they learned it in the past. And this procedure can act kind of like any information gathering move in a PBTA game, like read a sitch, or open your brain in Apocalypse World, or discern realities, or spout lore in Dungeon World. Because Blades in the Dark does not have moves like in a PBTA game, this is the procedure that replaces that. And it's not one specific role. It's not like a fortune roll or an action roll, because as we've seen in this game, the roles that are outlined are generally designed in a very generic way to handle a whole lot of different situations. And gathering information is kind of just one of the things they can do. So what we're talking about here is a procedure for determining how to give the players information, when to use a role, when to just give them the information straight up, when to get them to do a long-term project. That's kind of how it breaks down, and we're going to get into that right here. So there are different types of information gathering. In the case that the information is common knowledge, the GM should just give the player the information they want. So, how often does it rain in Duskfall? Oh, it rains pretty much every day. Okay, that's common knowledge. The PCs have lived there for a while. They just know this, right? There's no need to do a roll, anything fancy. You just give the information. Next, you have knowledge hidden by a clear obstacle. So, let's say you know a smuggler, and you want to get information about when they do runs. Okay, the clear obstacle is that the smuggler doesn't want to tell you this. So you're going to have to find a way to discern it, or convince them, or something like that. In this case, you use an action roll. And typically, with gathering information and action rolls, you're going to be using survey and study as the action ratings that the players should go to. Survey is about discerning things about situations or places, whereas study is more about discerning information about people or things. And if you want information or examples about how to use action ratings with gathering information, check out page 37, because there's a lot of very good examples there to work off of. Next, we have uncommon but not strongly hidden knowledge. So it's kind of just around, but it's not clearly guarded by any one thing. And yet it's still not common knowledge. So there may be a group of people in town who know about the smuggling route and who works the smuggling route and when they go, but they don't have any particular personal interest in whether the player character learns about it or not. So whether the player character will be able to find the people who know about it or not is kind of more of a matter of fortune, and so that's why you use a fortune roll. And as we discussed in the fortune roll episode, fortune rolls can take action ratings, right? That can modify the roll, but fortune rolls that take action ratings are not action rolls. Fortune rolls that take action ratings are a lot simpler than action rolls. So if you want to review the difference, go check out the fortune roll episode if you haven't already. Finally, we have particularly complex or hidden knowledge. So this is, very deep stuff. It could be like things that define aspects of the game world in a very strong sense. If you wanted to find out something about a forgotten god that is stalking the city, and there's no particular person you could ask about it, but you might need to gather information from many different sources and piece together rumors. In this case, you're going to do an investigation using a long-term project. So that's going to use clocks, of course, like any long-term project. And importantly, these investigation projects always return with great effect when completed. So after, like, they take place during the downtime phase, so they're going to take a fair amount of game time to actually return a result. And when they do return a result, the GM can't just say, oh yeah, like you did this big huge project and you researched all this thing, but you just actually got limited effects, so I'm only going to give you partial information. No, like if the player put the effort and the resources into doing the long-term project, they should get a good picture of what it was they were investigating. And this can be used to, define something interesting about the game world. So don't withhold too much. Use the great effect rule when these long-term projects are completed. So speaking of effect, gathering information and effects pretty much breaks down like this. So in the case that the players get extreme or critical effect, they get complete information about what they were asking about. They get a complete answer, plus extra info outside the scope of the original question. So if they were asking about where a vampire coven is in Doskval, you might tell them, oh, it's in this bar in this part of the Docks district. And in addition to that, you tell the players that they have a beef or a grudge going on with the Red Sashes, right? Like that's extra information they didn't ask about, but you're going to give it to them anyway because this is a crit, right? This is double sixes. This is extreme effect. So they deserve some extra information. Next, you have great effect. In this case, the players get exceptional details. They get complete information, including follow-up questions that may extend the scope of the question, right? So in the previous example, they don't get the bonus information, right, if they have great effect. However, they may kind of ask some interesting or skillful follow-up questions to clarify the location of where the vampire coven is that could reveal in the process of questioning that there actually is a grudge with the Red Sashes going on, right? They need to put a little bit of extra effort in to get that extra information. Next, we have standard effect. The players get good details. So they can ask clarifying and follow-up questions within the scope of the original question. So like, oh, they're in the Docks district, and then the players ask like, oh, okay, but which bar are they in specifically? The GM can't answer that question, but they might not be entirely upfront with it, right? The things the players want to know within the scope of the original question, where is the vampire coven, the GM can answer, but they're not going to give away extra information. Finally, there's limited effect. The players get incomplete or partial information. So more information gathering is needed to get the full picture. All right, so in this case, the players learn that the vampire coven is in the Docks district, but they don't know where. So they might need to go to the Docks district and talk to people there. Maybe they even talk to the Red Sashes. And the Red Sashes, if they, get a good result talking to them, will tell them that, oh, this is where the vampire coven is, and, maybe they'll let on that they have a beef with the Red Sashes. Just because you get a limited effect on an information gathering roll doesn't mean that the players will always be in the dark going into the future. It just kind of provides an opportunity for them to do more legwork, right? And that can lead to more interesting results. So that's the breakdown of effects. The last thing I really wanted to mention about information gathering is that, unlike in some games, this way of dealing with information about the game world tends to be about the GM giving information to the players. And I just wanted to clarify that. In some games, there is a lot of reliance on players defining things about the game world. But from what I've read in Blades in the Dark, it seems to put more of the weight of defining the game world on the GM. And that's why this information gathering procedure is here. If you want to play in such a way that the players have more sort of ability to define what's happening, then you can always throw the questions back to them. But that's kind of outside the scope of what this procedure is intended for. So if you want to do that, go ahead, but you're kind of out on your own. All right, so let's move on here. In the next episode, we are going to be talking about a big one, the engagement role. So I will see you then.